The blue line is almost across the screen. Hey, everybody. It is the 21st of March, 2024. This is Gimbalabs Open Spaces. We meet on Wednesdays and Thursdays from 1430 to 1600 UTC to work on stuff together. I'll share a Miro board. I just put it in the chat for everybody who's here. I'll share it on the screen for just a minute. What we did is we started the year by defining a driver for our work and 5 circles in which work can happen. These circles can change over time, and we will revisit the driver on a regular basis. But what we've been focused on lately, for example, in at least the education circle, and this has pulled in a lot of us, is preparing the PPBL 2024 course. But let's take, like usual, just 2 minutes. And if activity dies down after a minute, I'll end the clock early. But yeah, I'm on the Miro board right here. Harsha was making a circle. If you're looking for where we are, you can see it's right here, top of the page. And then there's today's date, 2024, March 21st. So what you can do, I'll start the timer, grab a sticky note. If there's something you want to talk about today, write that on a sticky note. If you don't have access to Miro, feel free to unmute and say it or put it in the chat, and I'll make sure that it gets onto the board. See you in 2 minutes. Here we go. All right, looks like we're slowing down a little bit. So I'll cut the timer short here, but if you have other ideas in mind, be sure to chime in. And let's just go from left to right. Open room. Who added this one?
Oh, I just added it just in case things get too technical for me.
Perfect. Hinson, you've got a Notion proposal.
Yeah, I just want to take like very quick time from here to just try to go through it and also get everyone a sense whether it's qualified because I'm not sure as well because I just write it very casually. So yeah, just as an exercise before going into any deep work today.
I like it. And Coxygen is on the agenda today. Anybody want to say a word?
Yeah, I just to give a reply to Claudio, and maybe if you're gonna review Hinson's proposal, maybe we're gonna jump in the other room to just I would like to get some feedback because the project to me sounds kind of interesting, but on the other side, how it's gonna work, I don't understand. So, am I being stupid, or is the proposal is kind of I just don't understand or something, you know? So, but I'm pretty actually 2 thumbs up to review the PBO, you know, and continue work on it because the momentum was with that, and everything else seems to be kind of a sidetrack.
Well, it's great that we still have this on our radar, though. And yeah, I already put this one. My intention is to keep working on the PBL outline. But it sounds like, would it be a good exercise to go through Hinson's proposal here in the main room first? And then we can shift here to the PPBL work with the breakout rooms open so other people can branch off. Any objections to starting here? Let's do it. I like that idea of starting with an exercise. So I'll pass the ball to Hinson. What you got?
Yeah, so give me like 10 seconds. I quickly open up my proposal. Oops. Okay. Let me try to share my screen. Can I do, yeah. Yeah, I got it. Okay. So it is kind of straightforward. Just summarize the proposal a bit. Is that I want to apply for the Notion account in the Gimbalabs workspace. It primarily serves two purposes. The first purpose is I want to start taking the lead into organizing the sustainability circle workspace so that we could plan ahead for if anyone got any idea on Fund 12 and also other activities that we could probably kickstart later, like in April or May. And the second purpose is try to participate more into the organization work in BBBL 2024. Just help James to clean up some of the kind of the files and clean up some typos, the kind of things. So these are the kind of core drivers. And as I've discussed, I'm applying for the annual subscription because that's our kind of our early kind of slight conclusion before, like because we don't bother to have the administration onto monthly review at this moment. So the mitigation is probably we could have one very, very quick sync by the end of the year to see whether I'm an active user or not. So if it's not, probably I would not ask for another year of renewal subscription. So yep, that's it. And as a pretty simple proposals, I could also send the links once more here in the chat. Yeah, in case anyone got any feedback, like whether this is a good proposal or not. Personally, I'm not quite sure as well because this is my first exercise trying to draft these things. But yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anybody have any clarifying questions about Hinson's proposal?
I have a small clarifying question, Henson. When you say completion in the evaluation criteria, it says completion in setting up sustainability workspace. Like
Yeah.
what does that entail in general?
Actually, I have a kind of similar workspace that I've been setting up with my own organization's Notion account. I would just migrate it to theirs. I could do a bit of screen sharing as well. Just a sec. Let me find the corresponding page. So, yeah, let me change the screen sharing to my Notion app. Where is it? Oh, got it. So yeah, this is my
We could see VS Code
yes.
right now.
I do the wrong screen sharing. A sec. Here. Just my desktop is too messy. So yeah, here is the kind of the simple workspace that we've been setting up before. So probably this is a brief structure, but I would try to make it a little bit more organized, like including some date and time and more details into the drives. But this is the kind of what we have got from the first discussion in the sustainability circles. But recently I'm kind of extremely tied up, so I didn't take any lead into further, kind of organizing it. But I could foresee, let's say the Fund 12 would probably be kind of one of the good opportunity for us to get some financial support for our open source initiatives. all around the Gimbalabs. So probably I would like to just also take chance to migrate these things into our kind of Gimbalabs workspace so that, yeah, kind of the information could be organized better because this is inside my own organization right now at this moment. So this is, yeah, some of the details, but the format is kind of still loosely defined right now because it's just a start. Let's try to put then any relevant things here, but probably we could further organize it. Yeah.
Does anybody else have clarifying questions about Hinson's proposal? Okay, so we'll move on to concerns and objections. Does anybody have any concerns about giving Hinson an annual Notion subscription or objections to doing so? All right, so now we get to
I have a
go
small
ahead.
question, another small
Yeah.
question. So if
Yeah,
someone
sure.
wanted to contribute in the sustainability workspace, say for example, potential work areas, and someone wants to contribute, do they have to apply for a separate subscription, or is there a way where you could like start and then we could just add on that Notion?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So I think I would just open up the space for anyone to edit at the beginning at least, so that, yeah, everyone with a kind of free account could access to any page in the workspace. But as a free account, if you are kind of contributing kind of frequently, probably you will find some of the blocker very soon. That's maybe the points that you should write another proposal. Yeah, just you could do it when you face a blocker, or
Mhm.
do you feel the tension? Try to use some of the S3 wording here.
Beautiful. Yeah. Very
Yeah.
good. Very good. Other concerns or objections about giving Hinson a Notion account?
Yeah, one potential tension is, I would say, when it becoming more and more organized, I may try to make it not editable by anyone. Like for some of the pages as it's open for comments,
Yeah.
that may be the time if you got another account so that you could have a more kind of edit rights onto the contents. That may be another point. But at the beginning, I was just open for edit for everyone.
It'll be easier to have opinions about that question as people really start to use this.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna slam the celebration emoji. I think we just passed a proposal in record time.
Yeah.
And this, y'all, this is how it can work, right? Once we get used to using these S3 processes, that's about the amount of time that it takes to go through a well-written proposal, right? And it's possible for teams to approve a dozen proposals in an hour, right? As we really start to practice these systems. So Hinson,
Yeah.
thank you. I'll add you right after this meeting. And that was I think that was a little bit of an unexpected outcome, right? When we originally wrote, what's the process for getting a Notion account? One of the ways I understood it was, well, when people have a project to do, they can propose. But I love this model, right? You're saying, hey, I need an account. Here's why. That's the proposal. So anybody else do the same? I'm excited for people to have these. I think it's going to make our time a lot more efficient. So yeah, very much looking forward to having you in there. Thank you.
Yeah. One last word is, I think for our next proposal, probably it's not necessary for everyone to participate into the discussion. Like whenever you are kind of
Always.
getting questions or getting opinions so that you could drum up with a breakout room.
This
So
is related to both. This is so important. This is related to both our circles and to our Notion implementation. Okay, remember
Yeah.
the Discord redesign we did at the start of the year, and we loosely followed this para method: projects, areas, resources, archive, PARA. Projects, areas, resources, and archive. I'm going to ignore archive for now, right? That's kind of self-explanatory. It's just stuff that we're not using anymore. And projects are at the top of the list. That's our current stuff, right? What are the deadlines we have right now? Plutus PBL is a project because we're working on it actively and we'd like to deliver it soon. But in between projects that are current right now and your archive, which is stuff that you're definitely not working on, are the areas and the resources, okay? Resources you can think about as like the public documentation. And as we start to organize Notion the same way as Discord by this method, we're going to have lots of public resources. And all of that should be public. We could even talk about which parts might need to be editable or open for public comment and all of that stuff. And then in between projects and resources are areas. And you can think of the areas as mapping directly to the circles we have. So we have a sustainability circle. That's going to have an area in Notion. And anybody who's working inside of that circle should be creating Notion docs that can be public or private, depending on what they want to share about the work of that circle. And finally, this connects, hints into what you're saying about, who's making the decision. Do we need everybody here to make a decision about a proposal?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Okay, we're not there yet, but where we're trying to get to is a place where this kind of decision-making process happens inside of each circle. So only the people who show up for the circle need to decide whether that's the work that circle is going to do. Okay. So we're aspiring to that. I know we're going to get there, and we're taking steps little by little to do so. All right, cool. We got through a
Yeah.
proposal. Should we jump into PPBL 2024?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do it. All right. I'm so excited about this work right now. It's in Notion. We'll get you in there today. Henson, very excited. I'm going to open up in my Miro the document we've been working on. Here it is. And then share the screen. Notion. All right, got it. We had a great conversation yesterday about the 100 level SLTs for the new course. And so what I've done is I tried to take our conversation and organize the first 4 modules. Okay. I think this link is public. Let me check. Yes, it is. So here it is in the chat if anybody wants to read through this doc on their own. And I'm down the screen. Okay. So actually, I'll just show you the high level view of this screen. One thing that's really nice about a Notion doc is it's really easy to make these little toggles. All right, so this document has 3 toggles. The 2023 outline, that's our archive of what we did last year. 2024, that's what you're looking for. This is where our current work is. And then we've got more ideas here, just so we don't lose anything. Think of this as like our parking lot. Cool. So today my goal is first to review the 100 level modules. And then if we have time to start really thinking about what the 200 level modules are going to need to be. So I want to try to tell you a story. This is the story that students of Plutus PBL 2024 are going to experience as they work through the course. And so for each of the modules, I just made this bold yellow text so you can see module 100, 101, etc. You've got a list of learning targets. And at the end, right, These are not final yet, so I'm not slapping numbers on them, but you can imagine that this will be 100.1, 100.2, 100.3.4.5, and so forth. And then for every module, we want to tell a story. We want people working through this course to feel as engaged as they do if they were playing like a role-playing video game. Okay, we want people to feel very clear about why they're there and what they're trying to accomplish right now so that they can get to the next thing. And having a story is really important to that, right? So this is just a draft. You don't write the whole story word for word in the course, right? We might use some of this copy, right? But look at the story that we're going to tell people. Welcome to the course. Let's get started. All of our work is going to happen on pre-prod. This is the first thing you need to know as a developer. Never test on mainnet. The good news is it's easy to connect to pre-prod and get free test data. In this course, we're going to show you how to build apps safely, but ultimately that's up to you. To get started, here's how to mint a pre-prod token for the course. Let's use it to see how an application works. Now map that story to these learning targets. We're going to show people how to connect their wallet to pre-prod, how to go to the faucet and get some test data. We're going to give them some advice on how to safely store their keys, but like we talked about yesterday, we can't measure this directly. We're going to give them a button to click on to mint their token on pre-prod that they'll use in the course. And then we'll give them an application to interact with so that they can start to have a picture of what an application is. And I'm really excited. This is the one that's new. These learning targets 1 through 4 haven't changed much since last year, but number 5 is new. And here's how I'm thinking about it. We can have people interact with the faucet, and then we can show people things. Hey, you are looking at an app built in a web UI, and that app changes depending on what tokens are in your wallet. Do you have the pre-prod token or not? When you click a button, you're building a transaction, and maybe it's eternal, maybe it's a different wallet. We can talk about if we're going to insist on anything, okay? But I really like I think people can learn a lot from really getting a guided look at the transaction signing screen from Eternal. So I think that could be really interesting. So you can imagine lesson 100.5, where we have people press a button to use the faucet, and then we show them what that transaction looks like to start planting seeds about what they're going to learn in the next few modules. And then we tell them, hey, there's a validator happening here. Maybe you've never heard about a validator before. Don't worry, we've got you. We're going to keep telling you that story in the next module. In this course, you're going to do a lot of stuff. You're going to learn how to mint tokens. You're going to learn how to build a validator. You're going to learn how to build transactions. And along the way, you'll learn a little bit about how to build some UI. So far, what do you think about the story people are getting with module 100? Can you imagine lessons for each of these learning targets? Let's keep going. I'm going to keep telling the story by moving to the next module, but if you want to revisit anything here, we will. Okay, so what happens next? This title, I'm wondering about changing one word right here. Last year it was build your first, or sorry, write your first smart contract. Now it says compile your first smart contract. Yoram, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I have I don't know, a question. First of all, it's great to be here and learn from you guys and see the process, so that's great. I'm just thinking about how the person get to the course. You thought about that. It's kind of pre-course, right? And like if So he gets through the course for someone that is already, like he knows already that he want to learn, right? This course, right? That's the assumption. But it's interesting to have kind of a pre-course kind of something, but that might be for another discussion. Like I'm thinking now on the hub in Africa or whatever it is, kind of something, okay, why you should learn Plutus, right? Because with Plutus you build 1, 2, 3. I don't know if it makes sense. I don't want to disturb the process, but that's kind of so someone that is not technical. That's kind of the first thought that came to mind.
Well said. Yeah, so this course, Plutus PBL 2024, is being written for people who want to learn how to be a Cardano developer. And so that helps us really focus on this. We're focused on this because our plan is, once we finish this course, by focusing on it, then we can look at, okay, what are some ways to onboard people to the course? And if anybody's not ready to start here, that becomes a really interesting question. Okay, well, there's people who maybe want to be ready to take this course, but how do we get them ready? Great question, but it's a separate question. And the reason we focus on anything is so that we can get to the next thing. Okay, so we are going to focus on the developer first, or the new aspiring developer, but Yoram, you're exactly right. We might need some better bridges to this course over time. Let's keep the story going. So instead of saying we are going to write your first smart contract, we're going to use a slightly more technical word, compile. And maybe some people don't know what the word compile means, but we're going to teach them by using that word in practice. We're going to show you how to compile the PPBL faucet validator from Plutus TX in both Demeter and locally using a Docker environment, or how to do it via Aiken locally, or how to do it via Helios locally. And it's really important that in this module, it's going to be a little different. We're going to be very clear telling people that they don't have to do everything. We just want them to know that these are some of the options, and we're going to show them the same smart contract in a few of the different languages it could be written in. What's the story? Well, the term smart contract is a bit misleading on Cardano. The more precise term is validator. There are lots of languages in which you can write validator code. You could do it in Plutus TX, Aiken, Helios, Option, PluTS, and the list might go on. Each of these languages is still evolving. For example, Plutus V3 is coming online right now. So how are all these different languages used on the same blockchain? Or why do we call this course Plutus PBL when we're going to tell you a little bit about Aiken or Helios or these other languages? Well, no matter what language you use to write your validator code, they all, there's this word, compile to UPLC, untyped Plutus core. So even if you're writing in Aiken, the end result after you compile still has Plutus in the name, UPLC. This is the code that actually goes on the blockchain. This allows for many different languages to emerge, as we're seeing right here, and it allows for continuous improvement of those languages. And this is a really, really big deal. Why is this a big deal? Well, because we're talking about a financial infrastructure that needs to keep working. Even as we improve it, we need it to be possible for people to update how it works without breaking the backwards compatibility. What's an example of this? A Plutus V1 validator still works today, and a Plutus V2 validator is still going to work after Plutus V3 comes out. That has to be true, right? We can't break that. However, there's disadvantages to using old versions. For example, it could be more expensive, or maybe there's features that you don't have access to. But that doesn't stop the fact that UPLC compiled from the past is still going to work moving forward. In this module, we don't want you to do everything. You really don't have to. Just choose one approach. And maybe we want to say something like this, right? We can give some guidance. Hey, if you're like this, you should try Aiken. If you're like that, you should try Helios, right? If you're not sure what you want to try, sure, take a look at each one and see what feels best to you. And in this course, we're not going to go too deep into any of these. Our goal is to give you an overview of what it means to write Cardano apps. When you're ready, you can join a course. This is that forward-looking part. We're not building all of these other courses right away, but we know that in the future, we want Mesh PBL next to Aiken PBL, next to Helios PBL, and the list goes on. So we'll tell people that. We're learning a bit about compilation, and you'll see your first validator logic, but another key point, on its own, the validator can't do much, right? And this is one of the most fun things to teach students. The validator can only say yes or no, right? Approve or deny, true or false, right? It can only validate or not validate. To really use it, you got to also know about transactions. And that's what we're going to do in the next module. One of the questions we had yesterday, is the faucet validator too complex? And there's a link to the GitLab with the old one. And I think it can be simplified. So I put a placeholder here to start doing that. So this will get us into the planning. But I think it's a good validator just for this example, because we're not going to have people write it. We're just going to give them the source code and have them compile it. And then this also gives curious students a chance to look at the source code if they want to, right? Some people see source code and they don't want to look at it before they learn some other things. But other people are going to say, okay, I'm going to try to read this. And both of those are fine, right? It just gives us a chance to show people a thing that really works. And then optionally, if they want to try to understand the validator code. So what do you think about the story as we move through Module 101? Nelson, what do you say?
Because of my own bias and how much it, felt right when I took the course, I still would tend towards using the word right in the lesson name, but that's fine. But like, okay, we're teaching compile, but in the name, write your first smart contract made so much sense to me. Just pointing that out. And then if we are we limiting SLTs to only certain numbers? Because if not, I would like to take LUTS.
That's awesome. Yes.
And last, in the PPBL 2023, Neil came in and write Opsin. He is the creator of Opsin 2. So we can reach out to him if you want to add that. If not, I can also take that. But yeah, more priority to LUTS.
Awesome. Yes, to both of those. Okay, so to those, to me, that feels like an easy choice. Can I put your name on this, but can you reach out?
Yeah.
You said Neil is his name? Yeah, he made a
Yes.
video for the last course. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, if you take those, that's awesome. What would you think about changing the word in the title to write, but leaving compile in the learning targets?
That sounds, yeah, I don't have much opinion about the learning targets deeply, but when you look at the course at the first glance, write your smart contract just after, get started, made so much sense to me when I took the course.
I agree with that. I agree completely with that. And I see what you mean, right? When people first look at the course, the first thing they're just going to see are the module titles, right? And obviously we'll shorten this up. But yeah, I think it's very cool for learners to see, oh my gosh, right away, I'm going to write my first smart contract. And that gets them in. And then we say, well, hold up a minute. We got some things we need to show you, but still, it is very exciting. And people will have the experience of going into a dev environment, having the code, and then from there compiling. So I like that. Claudia, what do you say?
Hi. Listen, I think the faucet aggregator is a beautiful contract to show. The thing that impressed me as complex, which I said yesterday, but I didn't elaborate, there are two things there which are a bit off-putting. First is that the mishandling of datum by the original implementation in Cardano. I think I would aim to have a contract first that shows simply inland datum, which is the simplest and most authentic thing to use to understand how datum works. And then the point is, if you look at the code in the faucet validator, it has to start dealing with this gigantic Russian doll, which is a script context. Yeah. Which is, it had to peel layers and layers and layers to get to any significant nugget of info you want. And that's also a bit of putting if you want to see. So if you can simplify those two things, I think that would be helpful for the first exposure to smart contract in Cardano. That's my opinion.
I like that. You wait, did you say show inline datum, or did you said built?
For me, inline datum is the most authentic version of how datum should be used in a smart contract. In fact, if you want to know, for reference, the Bluetooth Pioneers program, the latest cohort, they only use inline datums.
Yeah, yeah. I'm feeling like that too, right? In previous years, we were still showing people how to just use a datum hash. But I don't think we have to do that first. And even the same thing with reference scripts, right? In previous years, we were still showing people how to build a smart contract unlocking transaction by attaching the script to the transaction itself. I don't think we have to show people that anymore. I think it's fine to jump straight in to using a reference script. But later, right? Later, is it possible that later in the course we might want to just show people datum hashes? Sure, like we could do that later as like an advanced topic. And even it might come up in a live coding that you don't have to use reference scripts. But I think in terms of keeping it simple for people, I think this is really important. And I like this. Let's look at the script context and make sure that we're not overwhelming people. Thanks, Claudio. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, so I have maybe a couple of questions. So one is I can compile Bluetooth faucet validator and I can write my first smart contract. There's transaction building is missing, so we're gonna it may be a better question for like a later time, but for now the question is like, I mean, is it all right if we, for example, it will be much more comfortable for me to do so to do this process in an emulator, and then if you want to do interaction with the wallet and the other things, that's a kind of optional for the students to build. Or should we do like the whole thing with this? Because this implies setting up. I'm not sure I remember how APIs work, but I think that you need an instance and setting up the keys and things like that. So what's the preferable approach, would you think?
Mm-hmm. Very good. So to the transaction part, basically what we do here is we save transactions for the next module. What we want to do is inspire people who have never thought about these things before to want to build a transaction. And the way we inspire people to want to learn this is by saying, hey, you're going to write your first smart contract, but whoops, now that you did it, you can't do anything with it. It really doesn't do anything until you start to build transactions. Let's go to the next module to learn about transactions. Does that work?
Yeah, I understand this point of view. Yeah.
So then from the emulator side, my experience with emulators is that they are incredible once you understand why they exist.
Right.
But my experience, for example, working through Plutus Pioneers when I was first learning this stuff, is that the emulator got in the way of me understanding what were the most important concepts. Okay. So what I would love to do is get people to the point where they've built some transactions by hand, they've had that experience, and once you're pissed off about that experience, now you want to know how to use an emulator.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Does that
Yeah,
work?
right. Yeah, I mean, just in Helios, it's the same method. So if you use the emulator, you use this method, and you just, I don't remember exactly, but it's like you just change the option. And if you change the option, which is like API endpoint, you have to provide the API endpoint key. And that's the whole difference. And the rest is exactly the same, and it's pretty kind of, that's one of the good things about Helios developer experience. You don't have to think about you using emulator or using preprod or using like the real chain. So
you're saying if I had learned Helios first instead of Plutus TX, emulators might not have gotten in my way.
I mean, I don't see why it would, because again, it's like you use the same method, transaction, like TX dot something, you submit the transaction, but just when you submit the transaction, either you pass it to the emulator or you pass it like emulator wallet, or so instantiating the wallet is like, if you instantiate the wallet, you just specify if it's a real wallet, preprod wallet, or, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so this is where actually writing these lessons is going to get really exciting. Okay. Every one of us who's responsible for each of these is going to build the validator, and we can help each other with this, right? But we want to build this same validator in each of these languages. And then once we have those examples ready to go, by the way, obviously, each of these is not going to compile to the same UPLC, right? And each of these, even though the logic is going to be equivalent, they're not going to generate the same validator addresses, which gives us another chance to talk about a really important concept of Cardano development, right? But the other thing, separate from that, in these lessons, as authors of these lessons, we can each decide what else we want to show people, right? So in every one of these, you're going to see this, you're going to see the source code, you're going to learn how to compile it on a given platform, fine. But Alex, if you want to throw in some bonus material about testing this thing directly in Helios, or Hinson, if there's something in the Aiken toolchain that you just want to expose people to, these lessons could be a place to show people a couple of things. And that's going to be really exciting. And for all of us, if we throw some extra content into these lessons, two things might happen. One, the rest of the team might look at it and say, yes, that lesson is beautiful. Great job with the extra content. Let's go. Or the rest of the team might say, okay, that lesson's really good. And I think you went a little too far with the extra content. Let's take that extra content and let's move it to a 200 level module.
I would rather if we had the opposite situation, we've built a module and then the team says, there's something missing you need to add, because like this means we waste less work.
We were just talking database schema. We were just talking about how in a database, it's much easier to add properties than to remove them. And same thing with a course, right? It is painful to write something and then not to use it. So we can always balance that. Yeah. But let's all commit to deciding, if you see something extra you want to throw into these lessons, just jot a few bullet points about it and then bring that back to the team. And when we are in lesson writing mode, we can work on that together.
But then there's another point that we can actually kind of, which will help all the six. So, and I don't know how we should do it, I think. So there's something that unites them all, as they say, like a validator address would be different, but there will be some things that are exactly the same, and it would be specifications. So like I think we should dedicate some time next week or like a couple of weeks to write the specification for this.
Very good. Could you draft that?
As a politician, I cannot say exactly. I will try.
Okay, yeah, bring something to get that conversation started. Good. Yeah, because you're exactly right. The datums and redeemers for all of these, no matter what language they were written in, ought to be exactly the same when we're done. And so, yes, the validator addresses will be different, but it'll be very cool for people to see that no matter which of these they used, you're going to use the same datum and redeemer when we get to the next module where we're building transactions. All right, so we got started. We minted a token that we can play with. We interacted with an application. Then we learned how to compile the validator for that application. But we're starting to learn as devs that that doesn't get you very far, right? Just having a validator does not mean that you have an app. On Cardano, we build transactions. And this is so important for people to understand, right? So I really want to keep the learning targets simple. Build a simple transaction. Build one that unlocks tokens from a validator address. Which validator? One of these. Okay, so we're going to show people now how to by hand basically use Cardano CLI to build the same transaction that was built in their front end in lesson 100.5. Okay. And then we show people how to lock tokens at a validator address. And there's a few different ways we could do this. What's the story? To use a validator, you got to build a transaction. Every transaction on Cardano has inputs and outputs. So here we are. We're starting to introduce UTXOs. These are called UTXOs. All of the input UTXOs must be unlocked so they can be spent. Once a UTXO is spent as an input, it can never be spent again. Instead, every transaction creates a new set of outputs, which can then be input to some future transactions. So hopefully you're starting to understand why these are called unspent transaction outputs. That's exactly what they are. They're just outputs from some earlier transaction that are now available to be spent because right now they're unspent. So how do you unlock one? Well, it depends. And we can look at some examples, because I like how on Cardano Scan, for example, you can see whether an address is an address or a contract. So we can show people that, right? If the UTXO is in someone's wallet, it can be unlocked when the person signs the transaction. When you type your password into a browser wallet, you are unlocking some UTXOs from your wallet with your private key. To learn about how that works, we're going to build some simple transactions by hand. And this is going to help you get a feel for what's happening in any transaction in every Cardano application. Another way to unlock a UTXO is by using validator logic from a contract address. We'll take a guided look at how that works by breaking down the faucet unlocking contract. That's this. We're going to have them build that transaction by hand. When we do, we can look at each part of the validator code to start to see how it works, right? So as we build this transaction, lesson 102.2 is going to be a really, really fun lesson because we can point people back towards examples of the validator logic. We didn't explain much here, right? We just put a validator in front of people. But as we build the transaction, we could say, okay, we're going to include this thing called datum. The datum needs to be this. And here's where you can see the datum in a contract, okay? So this one's going to be really cool. And then finally, the details, I think there's a few options here for how we lock tokens at a validator address, but just keep in mind that both the faucet that we're going to cover here, and then maybe if we have a project or an assignment at the end of this module, and this one would be repeated from last year. In both of these cases, we unlock and then relock a new UTXO back at the same contract address. So a little bit of detail work to do on the story here. I'm not totally happy with this, but I am pretty excited to keep this list of options pretty limited. So what do you think?
One question would be, is all of this SLPs going to be covered using Cardano CLI or other tools?
Very good. Yeah, in my opinion, yes. So this module is only going to touch Cardano CLI. One of my questions is whether to split this into two parts, this learning target, but I'm kind of thinking I don't want people to feel like they have to run a node locally. So the way I'd like to handle it is by assuming that people will go to Demeter run first. It's at this point, Demeter has come a long way. It's really easy to start playing with Cardano CLI from a web interface via Demeter run. However, we do want people to be aware that at any time they can start running their own Cardano node and using Cardano CLI locally. So I want to play with that. And the Docker image is not in this list. So right. So maybe as part of this side quest, we give people the option. But what I feel pretty confident about is that we don't have to worry about showing anybody how to build the node. We could just show them how to install the Cardano node binaries, grab the config, and start to run it. And pre-prod syncs. I think pre-prod will sync for anybody with an internet connection in under a day, and in a lot of cases, less than that.
I think there are some pretty good references by this point. So I think we can point to somewhere else to get it installed, either on locally, bare metal, or Docker. Doesn't have to be our course, our content. We have some nice reference now, and just whatever transaction we built on the first one, we just copy paste it and make a video of it submitting to our local or a Docker, and that's I think really small step.
Very good. I like that. Right. So if we don't even try to write those docs, but we find really good docs out there and we just help people work through that. Okay. So now what have people done so far? Well, they started this course, right? And right away, whoops, let's change. All right, so right away we brought people in. Oh, that's still embedded there, whatever. I'm not going to try to do that right now. We got started. We minted a token. It's in our wallet. We interacted with an app and we learned a little bit about that. We compiled a contract and then we started to learn how to build transactions and use the contract that we compiled. Okay, now imagine a textbook. Anybody here who's ever been at school reading a textbook before? How often do you read the whole introduction of a textbook? Not often. The authors really have fun writing those intros, but I find when I read the introduction to a textbook, it's usually more about the author and what they want to say than about the learner learning things. So that's why this course doesn't have an intro at the beginning. What's the first thing you do? You get started. You connect your wallet to pre-prod. You mint a token. You do something, right? But at some point, we do want to give you an introduction to the course. So we do that in module 103. I put a question mark here. I don't care what this is called, but it basically, you can think about this as the introduction to the textbook. Now that people have already done something, let us tell you what you're going to learn in this course. We want you to understand the general architecture of Cardano applications and be able to explain the EUTXO model. It's okay if you can't do that yet. That's why you're here. We want you to be able to collaborate and contribute to meaningful open source projects. We're not going to require you to, but this is what we hope you'll be able to do. And just in case you want to, you know how to participate at Gimbalabs, right? This course is all about learning by doing. We're going to reiterate some of the concepts that you already saw, but most importantly, we're going to tell you, hey, you're already started, and hopefully you're already experiencing these things. The learning targets we present to you here are some of our big long-term goals. We can't promise that you'll be able to do all these things, and we'll never ask you to prove anything about any of these. But if we're all successful, this is what you're going to be able to do. Ready? Let's go. How do you feel? All right, I'm going to jump back for just a second to the proposal. This is kind of fun. Deliver Plutus PBL has a proposal that assumes in its budget that we will write maybe on the order of 30 lessons. 30. All right. And if we did, we'll have these rewards for each lesson, and that means we'll require a total of 13,500 ADA for content creators to write this course. How many learning targets do we have so far? We've got 5 plus 6 is 11, plus 3, 14, 17. It's looking to me like we might end up with more than 30 learning targets in this course, but that's okay. We can add another proposal to keep funding authors and editors of content. And we have those funds. We have the Gimbal Pool rewards, and we've got some Catalyst funds coming in. So I'm not worried about that, but it's fun just to pay attention to the number of learning targets we have so far. And in case I haven't said it clearly, there will be exactly one lesson for every learning target, okay? So with all that in mind, and also keeping in mind the idea that there's going to be deeper courses later. We don't need to teach everything about mesh, for example, because the mesh PBL course is going to go live right around the same time that Plutus PBL 24 goes live. It's likely that we'll have specialized courses about Aiken or Helios or other topics. So as we start to think about what other modules we need after people have the experience above, there's a lot of those kinds of things to keep in mind. So we're not going to finish this right now. I know we only have a few minutes left, but if everybody can take this away with you, think about this. What modules do we need at the 200 level? And what order should they be in? Should people learn a little bit about front ends and mesh first? Or should they learn about queries first? Or should we show them a different kind of transaction, one that mints a token? Or do we want to talk about the SIP process and connecting to NFTs? Okay. I do believe that these should be combined, actually. I wrote a note here when Hinson mentioned the SIP process before, but I think that talking about NFTs is the perfect entry point to talking more generally about SIPs, and I think this is a really powerful module for people. Do we want to have something focused on datum and redeemer, which takes us a little deeper into validators? Do we want to focus a module on script context just to learn more about the documentation and what's available for a validator to validate against? Or do we want to touch on advanced topics that we've never done before in this course, like why indexers exist? This might be too much, but I don't know. So for homework, think about this list. You've all got the list. And let's all think about the order of these. And then next week we can get together, decide which modules to teach, and then we can write a set of learning targets for each one. Okay. In the meantime, I think it's safe to start drafting content for the first few modules. So here's, people have already identified themselves. Until anybody whose name is here, you're not officially committed to this, but until you say otherwise, let's assume that each of us is going to start building these modules, or sorry, these lessons right here. So this is work that can happen immediately. These are lessons that can be written, and if anybody wants to start writing, just be sure to drop a line in the education channel in Gimbalabs Discord, okay? That way we don't make any repeated work, right? If you start writing without telling anybody, somebody else might be doing the same thing, okay? And then we'll be on our way. Next week, we'll finish these, we'll write the learning targets, and by the end of next week, we will be actively writing content and start thinking about deadlines for when we want to release each module. Way to go, team. I'm so excited. Thanks for getting this far. Let's do a super quick check-in round. Try to check out in 20 seconds or less. Hinson, how you leaving us today?
Yeah, a lot of things to digest, and I also think about this and how it could be used in the Hong Kong show. But yeah, after the Notion account is kind of granted, I would start organizing something inside as well. Yeah, so good session today, man.
Oh, I'm going to take a deep breath and be so excited as soon as you have that account. Good things. Sebastian, how you leaving us?
Really good, man. Great session. Thanks a lot. See you soon.
Partner. See you soon. Lucas.
Well, this really feels like the call that we had, the calls that we used to have when I joined some 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, and it just keeps getting better and better. The process, the contributions, the method. So congratulations, everyone.
Thanks, man. Adrian.
Good call, great progress.
Nice partner. Ken.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Thanks for being here. Harsha.
Oh, I think it was fun. But I do think from next session onwards, things will be going above my head. So yeah, that's fun.
I have you in mind as an editor, though, because you can tell us whether the lessons are clear. Tutor.
Yeah, this was a very good, informative session for me to understand your process. And yeah, I'd like to have a short conversation afterwards to ask some questions. Thanks.
Cool. Claudio.
Very nice session. I'm very happy with the way it's been organized. I just like to remind, I mean, the topics that people may feel that they're being left out. And in that case, I reiterate my idea that we may set up little study groups within the Discord and that to accommodate people's preferences in that regard. Right. So, okay. See you next week.
Like it. Thanks, Claudio. Nelson.
Yeah, I think it's a great and productive session. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. And Emmanuel, welcome. I'm just seeing your comment in the chat, and I'm glad you got the Discord from Sebastian. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great, and I'm happy being here. So this is the first call that I'm joining. Pretty much, I don't know how much of content I've missed, but I'm definitely much happy being joining in this call, and I'm looking forward to join more calls and catching up real soon.
Thank you. It's good to have you. Nice to meet you. And yeah, for anybody checking out this video or just joining for the first time, we do this open spaces meeting every Wednesday and Thursday starting at 14:30 UTC. 14:30 UTC, Wednesday, Thursday, and we go for 90 minutes, okay? And we do different kinds of work together. Right now, the focus is building PPBL 2024, but that's going to change over time. So excited to see what happens next. Claudio, I love that idea. I'm leaving really inspired today. I really like this idea of study groups. And when I think about the idea of getting feedback from students about what they want to learn, I'm wondering how we can create systems so that as students have big questions in our course, we can always be ready to keep writing new modules in new courses to respond to people's needs. Once we have this system going, which we're starting right now, we can make it really efficient to keep responding to what people really want to learn. So looking forward to that. So we'll end the broadcast here. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Tudor, I'm happy to stick around. I have like 5 or 10 minutes, but we can do a quick check-in if you want to.